You have been here before. Not here specifically. Not this conversation, not this particular Tuesday, but this place, this specific configuration of hope and frustration and the quiet, tired awareness of déjà vu that settles in when you recognize, with unwelcome clarity, that you are back in familiar territory. The relationship that started so differently this time, that had in the beginning a quality of newness, a different person, a different dynamic, a different set of surface details. And that has arrived somehow at a place that feels disturbingly like the place the last one arrived at. The same argument, wearing different clothes, the same emotional weather in a different house, or the money. The pattern that keeps repeating regardless of how much you earn. The way sufficiency never quite stabilizes. The way the floor seems to shift just when you thought you'd found it. The way financial security remains always one more step ahead, regardless of how many steps you take. Or the work. The project that begins with genuine excitement and arrives somehow at the same wall you've hit before. The opportunity that opens and then closes in the same specific way. The recognition that never quite arrives, regardless of how much the work improves. Or something more personal. The way you keep finding yourself in the same emotional place, the same loneliness or the same self-doubt, or the same contraction in the face of good things. The same inexplicable pulling back just when something genuinely good is within reach. You have been here before. And the question that lives in the middle of that recognition, the question that is the entire reason you are here today, is not how to escape this particular instance of the pattern. You've tried that, many times perhaps. New people, new jobs, new cities, new approaches, new frameworks, new practices, and the pattern followed. The question is, why does it follow? What is the mechanism? What is the actual operative, precisely understandable reason that the same configurations keep appearing in your life, regardless of the surface variables that change around them? Because if you know that, if you can understand it with the kind of precision that allows genuine intervention rather than another surface rearrangement, then something actually different becomes possible. Not a better version of the same pattern, an end to it. That is what we are here to explore. Let's begin. A repeating pattern in your external life is not bad luck. It is not cosmic punishment. It is not the universe singling you out for a particular difficulty or a particular lesson. It is information. Specifically, it is the external expression of an internal signal that has not yet changed. It is the field's precise, mechanical, non-judgmental reflection of a frequency that is being broadcast consistently enough and powerfully enough to generate the same configuration of experience across changing surface circumstances with remarkable regularity. In the terms we established in Script 8, a repeating pattern is a repeating nervous system state producing a repeating signal, producing a repeating reflection. The pattern is not in the external world. The external world is just the mirror. The pattern is in the signal, and the signal is in the state, and the state, the specific, physiological, deeply embedded pattern of nervous system activation that generates the consistent frequency, is in their body, not in the conscious mind, not in the beliefs you are aware of, in the body, in the nervous system, in the automatic, pre-verbal, deeply installed patterns of regulation and activation that have been running largely below conscious awareness, since long before you had the language or the developmental capacity to examine them. This is why changing the surface variables doesn't change the pattern. New relationship, same dynamic. Because the nervous system state that generated the dynamic in the previous relationship is still running and is generating the same signal that calls in the same dynamic again. Different job, same ceiling. Because the state that hit the ceiling in the previous job is unchanged and is producing the same frequency that generates the ceiling wherever it goes. The mirror changes. The pattern in front of the mirror remains. And here is the thing that is most important to understand about this. The thing that is most easily missed when people encounter this idea, and that, when missed, turns the insight into a new form of self-blame rather than a genuine tool for change. The pattern is not your fault. Not in the sense that you designed it. Not in the sense that you consciously chose to keep repeating it. Not in the sense that there is something broken or weak or spiritually insufficient about the person who is experiencing it. The pattern is the consequence of something that happened to you, usually early, usually before you had any capacity to prevent it, process it, or choose a different response to it, an experience, or more often a sustained quality of experience. That taught your nervous system something specific about the nature of the world and your place in it. That installed through the most efficient learning mechanism available to biology, direct, repeated, embodied experience. A particular frequency as the default operating state. And that default state, once installed, runs continuously in the background, generating the signal that produces the pattern, regardless of how much the surface of your life changes around it. The pattern is not your fault, but it is your responsibility. Not as a burden, as an opportunity, the most significant opportunity available to a conscious human being. Because the state that is generating the pattern is not fixed. It is not permanent. It is not the final word on who you are or what is possible for you. It is a learned pattern. And what has been learned can be unlearned. What has been installed can be updated. What the nervous system learned from one quality of experience can be replaced. Slowly, patiently, through the right quality of new experience. With what it learns from another. This is the whole work, and it begins with understanding precisely what is running. To understand why you keep attracting the same things, and therefore to understand exactly where the intervention needs to happen. It is essential to know that patterns do not live at one level. They live at three, and each level requires a different quality of attention and a different quality of work. Most approaches to changing life patterns work at only one level, usually the most surface one, which is why they produce partial results and why the patterns tend to return in new clothes, even after what feels like genuine progress. Level 1, the cognitive level. This is the level of conscious thought, of explicit belief, of the narratives we tell about ourselves and our lives. The stories. I always end up alone. Money is always a struggle. I'm not the kind of person for whom things work out. The explicit beliefs. I don't deserve love. Success is for other people. The world is fundamentally unsafe. Most personal development work happens here. Cognitive therapy, journaling, affirmations, belief work, reframing. All of it is primarily operating at the cognitive level, and this work is valuable, genuinely valuable. The conscious beliefs do shape experience, and shifting them does matter. But the cognitive level is the most surface of the three. It is downstream of the other two. The explicit beliefs are generated by deeper structures. They are the mind's rationalization and articulation of patterns that exist at levels it did not create and cannot directly access. Changing the cognitive level without addressing the deeper levels is like repainting the exterior of a building whose foundations were compromised. The new paint looks better. The building remains structurally unsound, and sooner or later, in a new relationship, a new job, a new chapter, the deeper structure expresses itself again through the new surface. Level 2, the emotional-relational level. This is the level of attachment patterns, of relational templates, of the deeply learned emotional scripts that govern how we relate to other people, to opportunity, to our own desires. The level that researchers like John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth were exploring when they map the attachment styles. Secure, anxious, avoidant, disorganized, that are installed through the quality of early relational experience and that shape, with remarkable consistency, the quality of every significant relationship that follows. Attachment patterns are not conscious. They are not beliefs in the explicit sense. They are more like operating systems, the pre-installed, largely invisible software that runs beneath the conscious programs of personality and preference and stated values. The system that determines, without the mind's input, whether a person moves toward intimacy or away from it, whether they stay in relationships long past their usefulness or leave before genuine closeness can develop, whether they experience genuine connection as safe or as the precursor to inevitable loss. And attachment patterns extend far beyond the domain of romantic relationship. They shape the relationship to work, to success, to failure, to authority, to collaboration. They shape the relationship to money, to earning, to saving, to spending, to the feeling of having enough. They shape the relationship to the self, to self-worth, to self-trust, to the capacity to receive good things without immediately finding a reason to return them. The emotional-relational level is deeper than the cognitive level and requires deeper work to shift. Not just the changing of thoughts, the actual experiencing of different relational conditions over time in a way that the nervous system can register and learn from. The therapy that goes beyond insight into genuine felt experience of a different quality of relationship. The inner work that produces not just understanding, but the actual embodied shift that the body recognizes as different. This is harder than changing your thoughts, and it produces correspondingly more profound and more durable change. Level 3, the somatic-physiological level. This is the deepest level, the level of the body itself, of the specific physiological patterns that are the substrate of everything above them. The chronic muscle tensions, the breathing patterns, the postures, the automatic nervous system responses, the cellular level memory of experiences that happened before language, before explicit memory, before the developing self had any framework for understanding what was occurring. This is the level that Peter Levine's somatic experiencing work addresses, that Bessel van der Kolk's research in the field of trauma and body memory explores, that the polyvagal framework we examined in Script 8 operates within, the level at which the most fundamental patterns are held, not as thoughts, not as emotional scripts, but as the actual physiology of a body that learned something about safety and stored that learning in its tissues. And this level is the deepest source of the repeating pattern, because the physiological pattern is what generates the signal. The signal is what generates the reflection, and the reflection is what produces the repeating external pattern. Change the cognitive level without changing the somatic level, and the pattern returns. Change both the cognitive and the emotional-relational levels without changing the somatic level, and the pattern returns. But change the somatic level. Genuinely in the body at the level of the actual physiological pattern. And the other levels shift in response, because they were always downstream of this one. This is not a reason to bypass the cognitive and emotional work. That work matters and it contributes to the shift. But it is a reason to understand that the work that ultimately changes the pattern is the work that reaches the body. Let me tell you about Simone. Simone was 34 and had been in therapy for 6 years. Genuinely good therapy. Inside-oriented, skillfully conducted, producing genuine cognitive and emotional shifts. She understood her patterns with impressive clarity. She could articulate with the fluency of someone who had spent years examining them exactly why she kept ending up in the same place in relationships, the attachment style, the parental dynamics, the specific emotional scripts that were running. She understood it completely, and she kept ending up there anyway. Not because the therapy had failed, because it had reached the depth it was designed to reach, the cognitive and emotional relational levels. And the pattern was held at a deeper level still, in the body, in the specific physiological signature of a nervous system that had learned in the first years of life that closeness is followed by withdrawal, and that the safest response to the threat of abandonment is to create it before it can happen to you. That learning was not in Simone's thoughts. She knew consciously that the belief was not accurate. She knew emotionally that the pattern was one she had chosen without choosing. But the knowing, complete and genuine as it was, did not reach the level where the pattern was actually held. The shift came through body-based work, through somatic experiencing that directly addressed the physiological patterns, the specific tensions, the breathing restrictions, the autonomic responses that had been holding the attachment pattern in place for 3 decades. Through the slow, careful, deeply patient process of giving the nervous system enough new physiological experience, enough genuine safety, enough genuine contact, enough evidence at the level of the body rather than the mind, that the old pattern began to lose its grip. It was not faster than the cognitive work. It was, in some ways, slower and more demanding. But it went somewhere the cognitive work had not been able to reach. And the pattern, at the level where it was actually held, began to change. This is the 3-level understanding: cognitive, emotional-relational, somatic-physiological. The pattern lives at all 3. The change that lasts reaches all 3, and the one that determines the signal, the one that the field is most fundamentally reading, is the 3rd. Let me walk through the most common repeating patterns, the ones most people in this space are experiencing, and name precisely, at the level of nervous system, state, and signal, what each one is broadcasting. Because when you can see this clearly, when you can identify exactly what signal your specific pattern is generating, the intervention becomes not guesswork, but precision. The relationship pattern, always ending up alone, or always ending up in the same dynamic. There are several variations of this pattern, and they broadcast subtly different signals, but they share a common underlying frequency. The person who keeps ending up alone, who gets close to connection and then watches it dissolve, often in ways that feel outside their control, is almost always broadcasting one of 2 signals. The first is the signal of the anxious attachment state. I need this to survive, and because I need it to survive, I cannot afford to let it leave. And because I cannot afford to let it leave, I hold it too tightly, and the holding too tightly is what makes it leave. The nervous system of the anxiously attached person is in a state of chronic low-level threat. The threat of abandonment, of being left, of the connection not holding. And from that state, the behavior that feels most natural, the monitoring, the need for reassurance, the intensity of connection, is precisely the behavior that tends to produce the outcome the fear is most afraid of. The field is not responding to the desire for connection. It is responding to the signal of the fear of its loss. And the field reflects loss. The second is the signal of the avoidant attachment state. Closeness is dangerous, and the safest thing is to maintain enough distance to ensure that when it ends, I will be okay. The nervous system of the avoidantly attached person is in a state of protective withdrawal, not from connection entirely, but from the specific depth of connection that would constitute genuine vulnerability. And from that state, the behavior that feels most natural, the maintaining of independence, the pulling back when things get too close, the finding of reasons to leave before being left, is precisely the behavior that produces the pattern of not quite arriving. The field is not responding to the desire for love. It is responding to the signal of the safety strategy that keeps love at a managed distance. And the field reflects managed distance. In both cases, the pattern is not the problem. It is the symptom, The problem is the nervous system state that is generating the signal. In the intervention, the thing that actually changes the pattern is the work that shifts the state, that gives the nervous system enough new experience of genuine safety, in genuine closeness, that the old signal begins to change. The abundance pattern, money never quite stabilizing, always one step behind sufficiency. The chronic financial pattern, the one that persists across changing income levels, that follows a person from one financial context to another and maintains the same essential quality of not quite enough, is almost always broadcasting one of two signals. The first is the signal of the scarcity nervous system state. There is not enough, there will not be enough, the ground is not stable, I cannot afford to relax because relaxing is when the floor drops. This state generates a relationship to money that is fundamentally adversarial. Money as the measure of survival, money as the thing that must be pursued and controlled and monitored because its absence is existential threat. And from that signal, the field reflects the ongoing quality of pursuit, of monitoring, of the floor that never quite stabilizes. Not because scarcity is real. For most people reading this, it is not, but because the scarcity signal is generating the scarcity experience. The second is the signal of the unworthiness state. Abundance is for other people. People like me don't get to have it. When good things arrive, something will happen to take them away. This state generates a relationship to money that sabotages arrival. The unconscious mechanisms that ensure that abundance, when it approaches, is deflected. The unexpected expense that appears precisely when savings begin to accumulate. The deal that falls through at the last moment. The opportunity that almost works and then doesn't. Not because the universe is punishing, because the signal of unworthiness is generating the collapse of what it believes it cannot sustainably have. The creative pattern, the ceiling that keeps appearing, the recognition that never arrives. The person who keeps hitting the same ceiling in creative or professional work, who reaches a certain level of success and then watches something shift, something contract, something pull back, is often broadcasting the signal of the upper limit problem. Gay Hendricks named this with precision. The tendency of people who have been unconsciously calibrated to a specific level of success, happiness, or goodness to unconsciously self-sabotage when their life begins to exceed that level. Not because they don't want more. Consciously, they want it enormously, but because the nervous system has a set point, a level of positive experience that it is calibrated to sustain. And when the positive experience begins to exceed that set point, when the success or the happiness or the goodness becomes more than the nervous system believes it is safe to have, the system finds ways to return to calibration. The sabotage is rarely conscious. It is the argument that happens just when things are going well, the mistake made at the crucial moment, the sudden illness before the important opportunity, the pulling back that begins precisely when the thing begins to arrive. The signal being broadcast from this state is, I am calibrated for this level. Anything above it is unsafe. And the field responding to the signal reflects the consistent arrival at the upper limit and the consistent return to calibration. The self-relationship pattern, the same self-doubt, the same pulling back, the same inability to receive. The person who keeps experiencing the same quality of self-doubt, who does the work and grows and changes and yet finds the same contracted quality of self-relationship waiting on the other side of every new achievement, is broadcasting the signal of the core wound. The core wound is the deepest level of the pattern, not a belief, though it expresses through beliefs, not an emotion, though it saturates every emotion, a fundamental, physiological, pre-verbal conviction about the nature of the self, usually something in the vicinity of, I am fundamentally not okay. I am fundamentally too much or not enough. I am fundamentally the kind of person who cannot be loved without conditions, or trusted without reservation, or received without caveats. This conviction is not the product of adult experience. Though adult experience may have confirmed it, it was installed before language in the earliest relational environment through the quality of being met or not being met by the people who were responsible for the meeting. And it runs beneath everything, beneath the achievements and the growth and the genuine progress, beneath the changed beliefs and the shifted emotional patterns in the body, in the nervous system, in the specific physiological signature of a self that learned at the most fundamental level that something about it was not quite right. The work that reaches this level is the deepest work, the longest, the most patient, the most tender, and the most transformative. Because when the core wound begins to heal, not through understanding, but through the actual embodied experience of being genuinely met at the level of the body, in the reality of the therapeutic or spiritual or relational container, the signal changes at its source. And when the signal changes at its source, the pattern changes everywhere. There is one more mechanism I want to name before we move into the practice, because it is perhaps the most counterintuitive and the most important for understanding why patterns persist, even when people are actively, sincerely, genuinely trying to change them. The nervous system has what we might call an identity immune system. Not a literal immune system, but a functional analog, a set of mechanisms operating largely below conscious awareness that work to maintain the coherence and continuity of the self, to preserve the consistency of the nervous system's model of who this person is and what kind of experiences this person has. The biological purpose of this mechanism is legitimate and important. A coherent sense of self, a stable, continuous experience of being the same person across time and context, is fundamental to psychological well-being and effective functioning. Without it, the experience of being human would be genuinely disorienting. The identity immune system is what makes it possible to wake up tomorrow and know who you are. But the identity immune system does not distinguish between healthy and unhealthy patterns, between the aspects of identity that support flourishing and the aspects that generate suffering. It simply maintains consistency, whatever the nervous system has learned to expect, whatever the established pattern is. The identity immune system works to preserve it. And this means that when genuine change begins to occur, when the work of the inner life starts to produce real shifts in frequency, real movement toward a different nervous system state, real signals of a different quality beginning to emerge, the identity immune system activates. Not dramatically, not with fanfare, just quietly, efficiently, with all the ingenuity of a very old and very sophisticated biological system. It finds ways to return to baseline, the unexpected crisis that derails the practice, the relationship that seems to undermine the growth, the situation that reproduces, with uncanny precision, the exact conditions that the old pattern requires to remain in place. The self-doubt that returns, louder than before, just when the confidence had been genuinely building. These are not external forces working against you. They are the identity immune system doing its job, maintaining consistency, returning to the established pattern, preserving the coherence of the self-model, even when the self-model is the very thing that needs to change. Let me tell you about Marcus. Not the Marcus from Script 4, a different Marcus. Marcus was 47, and he had been doing genuine, committed, skillful inner work for almost a decade. He had made real progress. Measurable, undeniable progress. The quality of his relationships had shifted. The quality of his work had deepened. The chronic self-doubt that had been the backdrop of his adult life had genuinely, not just apparently, reduced. And yet, every 6 to 8 months, with a regularity that had become a kind of dark joke in his own internal landscape. Something happened, a setback. Not always dramatic, sometimes just a quiet contraction, a pulling back, a return of the old quality of inner weather. But regular, predictable, as though something in the system was resetting periodically to an earlier version of itself. He described it as standing on a moving platform, making genuine progress, and then the platform periodically sliding back, returning him. Not all the way, never all the way, but noticeably, frustratingly back. The understanding that changed his relationship to this was the understanding of the identity immune system. The recognition that the periodic contraction was not failure. It was not regression. It was not evidence that the change was not real or that the progress was an illusion. It was the system maintaining itself, doing what systems do, seeking homeostasis, resisting disruption, returning toward the established pattern with the same faithfulness with which it had always maintained it. And working with this, rather than against it, required a specific shift in approach. Instead of treating the contraction as a problem to be overcome, Marcus began to treat it as information, as the identity immune system signaled that genuine change was occurring, that the established pattern was being genuinely disturbed, and that the appropriate response was not to push harder or despair, but to hold steady, to bring the same patient, compassionate, non-alarmed quality of attention to the contraction that he had learned to bring to every other difficult inner state. To say to the immune system, in effect, I see you, I understand why you're doing this. The change is real and it is safe. You can let go. Not as a command, as a reassurance. The kind of reassurance that only consistent experience can ultimately provide. The kind the nervous system can only receive through the accumulation, over time, of evidence that the new state, the change pattern, the different frequency, does not destroy the self, that it is, in fact, the self, more fully, more accurately, more genuinely the self than the pattern it is replacing. This takes time, more time than most people want it to take, but the timeline of genuine change at the nervous system level is not arbitrary. It is the timeline of learning, of the slow, patient, necessarily repeated process of giving the body enough new experience that the old learning is genuinely updated. You cannot rush the body's learning any more than you can rush the growth of a tree. You can create the conditions for it. You can apply the right quality of attention and the right quality of practice and the right quality of patience. And the growth happens in its own time, at its own pace, with its own logic. But it happens. This is the important thing. The pattern is not permanent. The identity immune system is not an enemy. The contraction, when it comes, is not a sign that the work is not working. It is the sign that it is. There is a concept from trauma therapy that I want to bring into this conversation because it offers one of the most practically useful frameworks for understanding how to work with the patterns at the somatic level without either bypassing them or being overwhelmed by them. The window of tolerance. Developed by Daniel Siegel and widely used in trauma-informed therapeutic approaches, the window of tolerance refers to the zone of nervous system activation within which a person can experience stimulation, emotional, physiological, relational, and remain present, functional, and able to engage and learn. Think of it as a band of optimal activation, wide enough to encompass genuine feeling, genuine engagement, genuine contact with difficult inner material, but bounded. Bounded above by hyperarousal, the overwhelmed, flooded, dysregulated state in which the nervous system is too activated to engage productively, and bounded below by hypoarousal, the shutdown, dissociated, numb state in which the nervous system is too collapsed to engage at all. Within the window, the nervous system can do its most important work. It can be with difficult feelings without being consumed by them. It can encounter the material of the old pattern without either avoiding it, hypoarousal, or being overwhelmed by it, hyperarousal. It can learn, genuinely, physiologically at the level that matters, from new experience. Most people who keep attracting the same things are working outside their window of tolerance in one direction or the other much of the time. The person who avoids, who manages the inner weather, who keeps the door closed, who fills the space with noise and busyness, is operating from hypoarousal. The material of the pattern is present but not available for processing. The nervous system cannot learn from what it cannot feel. The person who is overwhelmed, who goes into the feeling and is flooded by it, who tries to do the inner work and finds themselves undone by the depth of what is there, who ends each attempt at genuine change feeling worse rather than better, is operating from hyperarousal. The material of the pattern is present and too much. The nervous system cannot learn from what it cannot metabolize. The window of tolerance is the middle path, the place of optimal activation, and the practice of working within it, of approaching the material of the old pattern gently enough to stay present with it, gradually enough to allow genuine learning rather than flooding or avoidance, is the practice that actually changes the pattern at the somatic level. Here is what this looks like practically. When you are working with a pattern, when you are in the territory of the repeating dynamic, when the familiar emotional weather is moving through, when the old frequency is clearly active, you assess the window. Are you above it? Signs, flooding, overwhelm, the sense of being swept away, the feeling that this is too much, the inability to find any ground or any perspective. If yes, the first intervention is not to go deeper but to come back. One breath, somatic grounding. Feet on floor, hands on thighs, weight in the chair. The physiological sigh. Whatever returns the nervous system to within the window. And then from within the window, the engagement. Are you below it? Signs, numbness, flatness, the quality of watching from a distance, the going through the motions quality of a person who is technically present but not actually there. If yes, the intervention is not to push harder, but to gently increase the activation, to approach the material from a slightly closer angle, to make slightly more contact, to feel just a little more what is actually there, not flood. Approach. The difference between standing at the door and opening it slightly rather than opening it all the way at once. Are you within it? Then engage. This is the learning zone. This is where the nervous system can actually update, where the old pattern can be felt and metabolized and gradually replaced by something new. Where the work actually works. Let me tell you about Yuki. Yuki was 29 and had a specific repeating pattern in her creative work. She was a musician, genuinely talented by any account, who kept hitting the same wall in the process of sharing her work. She could create in private without limitation. The work was good and she knew it, but the moment sharing became real, the moment a performance or a release or any form of genuine public engagement was imminent, something would happen. Not a decision, a physiological event. The throat would tighten, the stomach would contract, the hands would sometimes shake, and the work, the good, genuine, ready work, would be withheld. Another delay, another excuse, another year of private excellence and public invisibility. Yuki had tried many approaches to this. Cognitive approaches, reframing the fear, challenging the limiting beliefs, reminding herself of the evidence for her competence. Emotional approaches, understanding the source of the performance anxiety, tracing it to early experiences of criticism and shame. All of this had produced genuine insight and some shift. But the physiological event kept happening because it was not at its source cognitive or emotional. It was somatic, a body-level pattern of threat response to the specific stimulus of being seen, installed through enough experiences of criticism or shame, or the specific pain of genuine self-expression being met with dismissal, that the nervous system had made it a rule. Visible equals vulnerable equals unsafe. The window of tolerance work gave Yuki a different approach. Instead of trying to eliminate the fear or override it or understand it into submission, she began working with graduated exposure. Approaching the stimulus of being seen in doses small enough to remain within her window of tolerance. Not performing to an audience immediately. First, playing in front of one trusted person, then two, then a small group of people she chose, then a slightly larger group. Each step taken only after the previous step had been sufficiently repeated that the nervous system had registered at the physiological level the evidence. I was visible. I was not destroyed. I can update the rule. This is the window of tolerance work in practice. Graduated, patient, physiologically informed, not pushing through the fear but gently, consistently approaching it from within the zone where learning is possible. It took 2 years. The performances are now regular. The physiological event still arises sometimes. The nervous system does not forget its learning in a single season, but it is smaller, less convincing, more manageable. Because the evidence file has been building, one graduated exposure at a time, that visible does not equal unsafe. The pattern is changing. Not because Yuki changed her thoughts about it, because she gave her body enough new physiological experience to change the rule at the level where the rule is held. Let's go into the pattern together. Not to fix it, not to overcome it, to meet it, with the same quality of compassionate, curious, genuinely present attention that we have been practicing together across this entire series. Find your position and take a breath. One of those real breaths, the kind that goes all the way down. Let your eyes close and let your attention settle into the body, the specific, physical, real presence of you. Here, now, in this moment. I want you to bring to mind, gently, without force, the pattern. The specific repeating thing in your life that you most want to change. The relationship dynamic, or the financial pattern, or the creative ceiling, or the quality of self-relationship that keeps returning. Don't tell a story about it. Don't analyze it. Just bring it forward as a felt sense, as a quality of experience, as the specific texture of what it feels like when you are in the pattern. And now, locate it in the body. Not the thought about it, the sensation of it. Where does this pattern live physically in you? Is it in the chest, a tightening, a heaviness, a compression? Is it in the stomach, a knot, a hollow, a bracing? Is it in the throat, a closing, a holding back, a restriction? Just locate it without needing to understand it, without needing to change it. And now, when this is the most important part, breathe toward it, not into it with force, toward it, with the quality of a person moving gently towards something that needs to be approached carefully, with the quality of the window of tolerance, present with it, but not overwhelmed, making contact but not flooding. Feel the sensation without building a story around it, the sensation itself, its temperature, its texture, its quality of movement or stillness. Just the physical reality of the pattern felt in the body as it actually is. And now, from this place of gentle contact, from within the window of tolerance, neither avoiding nor flooding, I want you to ask the pattern something. Not demand, ask. with genuine curiosity. The question is this: what did you come to protect me from? Let whatever arises arise, not with the mind, with the body, not an intellectual answer, a felt response. The pattern has a logic. It was installed because it made sense in the conditions that installed it. It has been running because, at some level, it still believes its protection is necessary. What is it protecting? What did it learn was the danger? Let it be whatever it is. Let it be as old or as young as it actually is. Let the truth of it be present as gently and as completely as is available right now. And now, from this place of genuine contact with the pattern, of genuine understanding of its purpose, I want you to offer it something. Not a command to stop, not a demand that it leave, a reassurance. Find the words that are true for you. They might be something like, I understand why you're here, and I want you to know that I am safe now in ways I wasn't when you were installed. I don't need this protection in the same way anymore, and I am learning, slowly, with patience, to give you the evidence of that, one experience at a time. Let those words be felt rather than just thought. Let them be directed toward the sensation in the body, toward the pattern as it lives in the physical self, as a genuine communication between the conscious you and the ancient, faithful, protective biology that has been running this signal on your behalf. Feel what happens when you do this. Not an immediate dramatic resolution. That is not how the body works, but perhaps a slight softening, a small reduction in the intensity of the sensation, a quality of having been heard that is subtly different from having been managed or overridden. This is the beginning of the update. This is the body beginning to receive new information. This is the pattern being approached not with force, but with understanding. And understanding, at the somatic level, is one of the most powerful inputs the nervous system receives. Take a breath. Let it be full. Let it carry the quality of gentle, patient, compassionate contact with yourself. With all of yourself, including the parts that have been running the old pattern, including the parts that have been in the grip of the old signal, including every version of you that has been doing its best in the conditions it found itself in. You have been doing your best. Always, the pattern was your best. And something better is becoming available now. Not because the old version was wrong, but because the conditions have changed and the nervous system, given enough time and enough evidence, will change with them. Take one more full breath, and when you're ready, gently, without rush, return. Welcome back. Let me now give you the specific, practical, physiologically grounded account of what actually changes a repeating pattern, not what addresses it at the surface, not what produces temporary relief, what actually, at the somatic level, at the level of the nervous system state that is generating the signal, changes it. There are 5 elements. Each one is necessary. Together, they constitute the complete intervention. Element 1, recognition without judgment. The pattern cannot be changed until it is clearly seen. Not analyzed to death, seen, felt, recognized with the specific quality of awareness that is neither avoiding nor identifying, neither dismissing nor catastrophizing. The witness quality we have been cultivating throughout this series. And critically, seen without the additional weight of judgment, without the self-blame, the shame, the despair that so commonly accompanies the recognition of a pattern. The pattern is not evidence of your failure. It is evidence of your adaptation. It is the faithful expression of a nervous system doing exactly what it learned to do in the conditions it learned it in. Recognition without judgment is the foundation. Without it, everything that follows is built on sand. Element 2, somatic contact. The pattern must be felt in the body, not just understood in the mind. Located, specifically, physically, in the sensation. An approach with the quality of the window of tolerance work we explored earlier. Present with it, making contact, neither avoiding nor flooding. This element is where most people need the most support, because making genuine somatic contact with the material of old patterns requires a quality of nervous system regulation that most people cannot yet sustain alone. This is one of the clearest arguments for skilled therapeutic support. For working with a practitioner who can provide the co-regulation, the regulated nervous system presence we discussed in Script 8, that allows the client's nervous system to stay within the window of tolerance while making contact with material that would otherwise either flood or be avoided. If skilled support is not accessible, the practice is graduated self-exposure within the window. Approaching the somatic material in small, manageable doses with frequent returns to regulation, building the tolerance incrementally over time. Element 3, new physiological experience. This is the mechanism by which the nervous system actually updates. Not insight, not understanding, not even the correct emotional processing. New physiological experience. The actual body-level encounter with something different from what the pattern has been rehearsing. For the person whose pattern is the fear of genuine closeness, the actual physically experienced encounter with closeness that does not end in the anticipated way. Not the thought that closeness might be safe. The felt experience of it actually being safe registered in the body, available to the nervous system as genuine evidence. For the person whose pattern is financial scarcity, the actual physically experienced encounter with abundance, even small abundance, that does not immediately disappear. The felt sense of having and keeping, even briefly, even in a small way, registered as genuine evidence against the scarcity signal. For the person whose pattern is the creative ceiling, the actual physiologically experienced encounter with being visible and being received well, even once, even in a small context, registered in the body as evidence against the rule that visibility equals danger. This is why the graduated exposure approach is so effective. Each step, when completed, provides genuine new physiological experience, genuine evidence. The nervous system updates from experience, not from instruction. Element 4, repetition and consolidation. One instance of new physiological experience is not enough. The nervous system learns through repetition, through the accumulated weight of enough new evidence that the old rule becomes less compelling than the new one. This is why the work takes time, why the timeline is measured in months and years rather than sessions and weeks. But this is also why consistency matters more than intensity. The person who practices daily, who returns to the window of tolerance work, the somatic contact, the physiological sigh, the graduated exposure, the gentle reassurance of the identity immune system. Every single day, even briefly, even imperfectly, is building the accumulated evidence file that the nervous system needs to update. 1 hour of intensive work per week with no other practice produces less genuine change than 5 minutes every day, because the nervous system is updating continuously, not in scheduled sessions. And the consistent daily input changes the baseline more profoundly than the occasional intensive. Element 5, compassionate witness. Throughout the process, and especially in the moments of contraction, of identity immune system activation, of the periodic return to the old pattern that is inevitable and normal, the quality of the observer matters enormously. The harsh, self-critical witness, the one that treats each contraction as failure, that responds to the return of the old pattern with disappointment and despair, increases the activation level, reduces the coherence of the signal, and pushes the nervous system further from the window of tolerance. It makes the work harder. The compassionate witness, the one that treats each contraction as information that responds to the return of the old pattern with the patient acknowledgement of, aha, there it is again, I see it, I am not alarmed, I return, decreases the activation level, increases the coherence, and maintains the window of tolerance. It makes the work possible. The compassionate witness is not a natural default for most people. It is itself a practice, one that is built through the same accumulated repetition as every other aspect of this work, through the daily choice to meet yourself with the same quality of patience and understanding that you would offer to someone you genuinely love. You deserve that quality of meeting from yourself, especially in the moments when the pattern returns. Especially then. I want to offer you a final reframe before we move into the practical section, because everything we have explored today about repeating patterns, the mechanism, the 3 levels, the identity immune system, the window of tolerance can be held in 2 very different ways. It can be held as a burden, as the evidence of how complex and deep-seated the work is, of how many layers there are, of how long it takes and how much it requires, a reason for discouragement. Or it can be held as something else entirely, as a map, as the most precise, most personally specific guidance available about exactly where the work needs to go, exactly what needs to shift, exactly where the deepest change is possible. The repeating pattern is not the opposite of the life you want. It is the exact pointer toward what needs to heal in order for the life you want to become your natural signal. Every pattern, understood this way, is a portal. A doorway into the specific, deeply personal, completely irreplaceable work that is yours to do. The work that, done fully, changes the signal at the source. That produces not a better version of the old life, but a genuinely different one. Because the signal generating it is genuinely different. Let me tell you about Josephine. Josephine was 51 and had spent the better part of her adult life in the grip of a specific pattern that she had long regarded as her greatest burden. The pattern of self-erasure, of consistently in relationships and in professional contexts and in the ordinary moments of daily life, making herself smaller than she was, editing her opinions before they became audible, shrinking her needs before she could be told they were too much, preemptively disappearing before anyone else could make her disappear. She had worked on this pattern for years, from the cognitive level, understanding where it came from, reframing the beliefs underneath it, from the emotional level, grieving the relationships in which she had lost herself, building the capacity for different kinds of relational engagement. Real work, genuine work. And then, in her late 40s, she began the somatic work, the body-level engagement with the specific physiological signature of the self-erasure. The way she literally made herself physically smaller in certain contexts, the way her breath shortened and her posture collapsed and her voice dropped when the threat of being too much arose. And something happened that she described as the most significant thing that had ever happened in her inner life. She discovered that the pattern, the self-erasure, the lifelong burdening contraction, was sitting right on top of something extraordinary. Beneath the self-erasure was the self that had been erased, the full, unedited, complete version of Josephine, the one whose opinions were strong and whose needs were real, and whose presence was considerable, and whose energy, when it was allowed to be what it actually was genuinely extraordinary. The pattern had not destroyed that self. It had covered it. Faithfully, dutifully, for half a century, the self-erasure had been sitting on top of the full self, protecting it from the world that had, in early experience, found it too much. The pattern was the guardian of the self, not the enemy of it. And when Josephine understood this, not just intellectually, but in her body, in the specific physiological moment of letting the full self come forward for the first time without the covering, she wept, not with grief alone, with recognition. There she was. She had been there all along, beneath the pattern, waiting with the patience of something that knows it cannot be destroyed for the conditions that would allow it to emerge. The pattern had been the portal. The thing she had spent years trying to dismantle was the very thing that led her, when approached with understanding rather than force, directly to the self she had been trying to find. This is the reframe. The pattern is not the barrier to the life you want. It is the doorway to the self that has always been capable of living in it. You do not have to destroy the pattern. You have to understand it deeply enough that it shows you what it has been protecting. And then gently, compassionately, with the patience that the depth of the work requires, you create the conditions in which what it has been protecting can emerge. The full self, the original frequency, the real you. She has been waiting beneath every pattern all along. Let me give you the concrete, daily, practical framework for doing this work, not as a rigid protocol, as a living practice that adapts to where you are and what the pattern is bringing up on any given day. Morning, pattern acknowledgement and signal setting. Begin the day with 2 minutes of honest acknowledgement, not of the pattern's power, of its presence. A brief, non-alarmed internal acknowledgement. This pattern is here. I see it. I am working with it. Today I bring the quality of compassionate, curious attention to wherever it shows up. This acknowledgement does two things. It removes the element of surprise, the jarring, destabilizing quality of finding yourself in the pattern again after thinking you'd move past it. And it sets the tone for the day as one of working with rather than against. The quality of attention that keeps the nervous system within the window of tolerance when the pattern arises. Then, the signal calibration from script 8. The physiological sigh, the extended exhale breathing, the bringing to mind of the safe place, the brief inhabiting of the ventral vagal frequency, not to bypass the pattern. To approach the day from a regulated baseline rather than an activated one, from within the window rather than from above or below it. 5 to 7 minutes total, the foundation of the day. During the day, the pattern as information. When the pattern arises during the day, and it will because patterns are generated by the nervous system, and the nervous system is active all day. Practice the 3-step response. Step 1, notice. Oh, the pattern is here. The familiar contraction, the old dynamic, the repeating configuration. I see it. Step 2, locate. Where is it in the body? What is the sensation? Am I above the window, below it, or within it? Step 3, respond appropriately to the window assessment. If above, regulate first, physiological sigh, somatic grounding, then engage. If below, gently approach, slightly more contact, slightly closer to the material, then engage. If within, engage. Feel the sensation, approach it with curiosity, let it be information. This 3-step response, practice consistently across the many small moments in which the pattern arises, builds the capacity for the window of tolerance work in real time. It makes the practice of pattern change not a scheduled therapeutic activity, but a living, breathing, moment-by-moment engagement with the most important work of your life. Weekly, the pattern journal. Once a week, spend 15 minutes with a specific journaling practice focused on the pattern. First entry. When did the pattern arise this week? List the specific moments, the context, the triggers, the people, the situations. Second entry. What was the nervous system state when it arose? Above the window, below it, within it? What was the quality of activation? Third entry. What did the pattern protect me from this week? Not the story about why the pattern is wrong. What was the specific threat, real or imagined, that the pattern was responding to? Fourth entry. What new physiological experience was available this week? What moments occurred in which the pattern could have fully expressed and didn't? In which the window held? In which something slightly different was possible? This journal builds the map. Over weeks and months, the patterns become visible. The specific triggers, the specific quality of nervous system response, the specific context in which change is most available, and those in which the identity immune system most strongly activates. And the map allows the work to become increasingly targeted, increasingly precise, increasingly effective. Monthly, the evidence file. Once a month, review the pattern journal with a specific question. Where has the pattern been less powerful this month than last? Not where has it disappeared. It has not disappeared. Where has it been less convincing, less consuming, less automatic? Where has the three-step response been faster? Where has the window of tolerance been wider? Where has a moment occurred that would 6 months ago have been entirely captured by the pattern and that this month was met differently? Find the evidence, document it, let it be received. Not as proof that the work is done, but as genuine confirmation that the work is working, that the signal is shifting, that the pattern, approached with understanding and patience and consistent somatic attention, is genuinely, measurably, slowly changing. The evidence file is not vanity. It is the fuel that sustains the long-term work, because the long-term work requires evidence. The nervous system requires evidence. The identity immune system requires evidence. And you, the person doing this difficult, important, completely worth it work, require evidence that the effort is not in vain. It is not. It is the most important work there is. You have been here before, but here is what you perhaps have not fully known until today. The pattern that keeps bringing you back here, the repeating configuration of experience that you have tried in so many ways to escape. It is not your enemy. It is not your punishment. It is not evidence of something fundamentally broken in you that will never be fixed. It is a signal, precise, mechanical, completely non-judgmental. The faithful expression of a nervous system state that was installed by experience and that has been broadcasting continuously and consistently the frequency that generates the reflection you keep encountering. And signals can change, not through force, not through the accumulation of better surface level thinking, not through the adding of more and better practices to a system that is generating the old signal from its depths, through the patient, compassionate, physiologically grounded work of actually approaching the state, the somatic level, the place where the pattern is actually held, and giving the nervous system, slowly, consistently, with the graduated patience of someone who understands that the body's learning takes the time it takes. Enough new experience that the old signal begins to update. This is not a quick fix. This is the work of a lifetime. But not a lifetime of suffering through the same pattern. A lifetime of the most interesting, most meaningful, most genuinely transformative work available to a conscious human being. The work of understanding at the deepest level how you were shaped. And then, with all the love and patience and precision you can bring to it, shaping yourself towards something more fully, more genuinely, more completely you. The pattern is the portal. The signal can shift, and when the signal shifts, the pattern changes. And when the pattern changes, when the field finally receives a different frequency and reflects a different reality, the life that forms around you is not the old life improved. It is a genuinely different life, one generated from a genuinely different signal, the signal of a nervous system that is increasingly at home in itself. That is what is available on the other side of this work. Not perfection, home. If these conversations are reaching something real in you, if across this series you can feel something genuinely shifting, something genuinely deepening, something in the signal of your life beginning to change quality, I want to warmly invite you to stay in this space. Subscribe if you haven't. The next conversation is already forming. Each one builds on what came before. Each one goes somewhere new. The subscribe button is right below. One click, and this keeps finding you when you need it. Leave one word in the comments, the word that names what the pattern has been protecting, or the word that names what you are ready now to let emerge from beneath it. One word, one signal, one beginning. I'll see you in the next one. The pattern is not permanent. The signal can shift. You are not stuck. You never were.